You get over there.
Have you considered Mr. Santos Pinchetti as a suspect?
The snitch? Have you seen him? I mean, my breath could knock him down. What's so special about him?
As a major domo, he has keys that open all the rooms, including the one to the crime scene. Could have testified only to circumvent suspicion, don't you think? We need to question him.
Right. I'll send our men to fetch him. Stay here. They brought him in, Mr. Holmes. Here's the key to interrogation room number 7. Mr. Pinchetti didn't even resist, our men said.
Thank you.
You can question Mr. Pinchetti in the interrogation room. You can question Mr. Pinchetti in the interrogation room.
Yeah.
Mr. Pinchetti, a pleasure to meet you. I'm Sherlock Holmes. I'm helping Constable Oswald.
I've already told him everything I know. I'm only a witness, sir. Everything's in my report.
And I've read it. You forgot to mention that you hold the keys to the room where Fabio was found. I need only to find if the crime was intentional.
But I need to return to my duties.
I doubt the house will fall without you, Mr. Pinchetti. Just be still for a few seconds. You are the major domo of a rich mansion, and you seem barely able to afford decent clothing. You hide, under heavy makeup, a skin disease that might be treated with more onerous but less harmful means. Do you have money troubles?
I do not have a lot of means. The pay is below what you might expect.
But you could easily change your job if your employer does not meet your elementary needs.
One can change his employer, that is true.
And the blood on your shoe, where does that come from?
I don't actually know. Perhaps from a guest?
Did you know Fabio?
Not personally. He was a frequent guest, and cleaning the mess after his performances was tedious. Mr. Manchios always had a role for him, and mainly the leading one. The parties were always, Fabio-centric?
And Matista? Was she as popular as her partner?
Don't tell her I said this, but I do not think so. Mr. Manchios hired her only because Fabio refused to work without her. Mr. Manchios used to see her as a worker. She was tasked with entertaining the guests, unlike Fabio, who could pick and choose. Please let me out. Please let me out. Please let me out.
I recognize the key from the altar room among these. Mr. Manchios says that you begged him to be included in the heritage. Isn't that a little extreme, even for a major domo?
He's not only my employer, he's my uncle. And I'm his next of kin. The only one. Mr. Manchios flatly refuses to pay a family member. All I have to do is repay his so-called love, cleaning up the filth after perverts and decadents. He's imprisoned me. The best I can hope for is a new broom. That's why I wanted to have my part of the inheritance.
Is it that bad? You have a roof above your head, a salary, and the status of a major domo.
For God's sake, I'm forced to dye and stitch my threadbare clothes, and the holes in my shoes are painful. I'm ashamed every time a guest looks at me closely.
Why do you think your uncle treats you this way?
My mother, my uncle's sister, had me illegitimately. She died, and I was given the surname of one of the maids.
But you are entitled to some of the money that belongs to your family.
He thinks not. I was not responsible for my mother's death. I work hard, and he pays me nothing. I feed on the leftovers. While he wastes our estate's property on decadent parties, he paid Fabio handsomely and showered him with expensive gifts for their disgusting relationship. Please let me out. 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 Please let me out.
Continue our investigation while I look for the papers.
This area's restricted.
I'm not supposed to know anything about this. I'm not supposed to know anything about this. I'm not supposed to know anything about this. I can't follow you here. I'm not supposed to know anything about this.
I have learned who told the police about the crime. It was Santos Pinchetti,
Do I know him?
the major domo of the manor. He cleans up after you.
Well, then he does his job perfectly. All but invisible. I couldn't tell you the first thing about him. I know you can untangle this mess. The air here is rather refreshing. I'd even recommend that some of my friends visit the place. The air here is rather refreshing. I'd even recommend that some of my friends visit the place.
Please let me out.
Continue our investigation while I look for the papers. Continue our investigation while I look for the papers.
What a bunch of losers.
The air here is rather refreshing. I'd even recommend that some of my friends visit the place. The air here is rather refreshing. I'd even recommend that some of my friends visit the place.
Please let me out.
Good day, Mr. Manchios. I am Constable Oswald's partner in this investigation.
Be quick and gentle. Some of your colleagues are untrained boors. Although I don't mind meeting young officers. The new blood here.
If you cooperate in finding Fabio's murderer, there will be no need to meet with the Boers again.
That voice. Werner's friend? You're the policeman. What a disappointment.
Only an undercover agent can scour a ditch full of deviants. I am a consulting detective, although I'm capable of replacing the entire department through my consultations.
Sharp-tongued, I like it. May I presume this tongue will get us out of this trouble? I would be so indebted and glad to repay you.
Nothing's changed. I'm looking for the murderer. That's the only way to get us out of trouble.
But it shouldn't take much time, correct? We're all busy, after all.
I need to examine you first. You are so focused on cleanliness that these products are severely damaging your skin.
I would laugh at you. Ha! If only my cheeks didn't hurt. Not exactly. I try to take care of my body. A young man who has yet to confront his own aging couldn't hope to understand.
These chemicals are quite literally melting your face.
Ah, the price of beauty. I'll be fine. I'm sure of it.
Such a methodical man who cares for his body but misses the soap under his fingernails. Are you so impatient, or perhaps even impulsive?
I wouldn't call myself that. Silly little details. If I missed it, it wasn't important. Or rather, it was less important than who or what I was focused on.
What was Fabio like? His personality, his habits? Anything you can tell me?
He was the brightest star of my parties. Young, magnetic, and full of energy. I don't even want to mention his beauty. Otherwise, I'll be sobbing.
An expensive champion, I imagine.
His performances were flawless. He deserved his payment. Do you think he was murdered because of money?
Possibly. What about the other guests? Were they used to opening their wallets as well?
I wouldn't restrict my guests from anything. I'm sure Fabio received a few coins from others for his services.
Mr. Vogel told me a little about your parties, but I would like to know more directly from you.
I'm all yours, Sherlock. You have me arrested and locked here with you alone.
I'd like to know who you usually invite to your parties.
Free minds who are able to leave reality for an evening, who can taste forbidden fruit without prejudice. There is nothing that quite spices up life like these parties, assuming one is old enough and has worked many years for the good of one's country.
Oh, all true labourers, I see. Why did you invite Mr. Vogel as your special guest?
He's a pretty fellow. He's capable of surprising the public. He has a talent for saying words that no one else would wish to either say or hear.
I suppose I can't argue with that.
He is a free addition to the eccentricity of the party, which is fine by me, as long as it enhances my party.
I've read the letter about your will. A harsh method of ridiculing Santos. I doubt he will use mustache wax when he wears no mustache to begin with.
Where did you get it? Is the slug here? Tell him I shouldn't have to provide for him. He's a grown man who shouldn't sit on his uncle's neck. He conceives himself as my only heir.
And who is he to you?
He's a leech on my aging body. He has only added problems to my life since the death of his mother.
I fail to see why you made him your major domo.
He needed to know his place, so I taught him. I've no idea about that. You'd better ask someone else.
Do you have any idea who tipped off the police to raid your mansion, Mr. Manchin?
Of course. It was you. I could even say you Sherlocked me in here.
A good guess, but the wrong one. The fellow who did that was Mr. Pinchetti, your major domo.
What? Santos? But how could he even know? If he's not the murderer himself. The ungrateful swine. He has dared to besmirch my reputation.
Not a very eloquent choice of words.
What should I call him then, since he's a snitch? Make him talk, Sherlock. I'm quite certain he knows more about the murder than he has told the police. That's not something I know much about. You'd better ask someone else. You'd better ask someone else. That's not something I know much about. That's not something I know much about. You'd better ask someone else. That's not something I know much about. I've no idea about that. That's not something I know much about. You'd better ask someone else.
You bought an expensive pair of cufflinks for Fabio. Were they his price? Or were they a tip for an exclusive show.
It was pure business. Fabio escorted me a few times. I was merely showing my gratitude.
This pair cost a small fortune. You must be extremely grateful, then. Tell me more.
You've thrust a knife in an exposed nerve, Sherlock. Yes, he was my protégé, and my beacon also. With my experience and his beauty, we could have achieved anything. I had faith in him. I would have made him. I can't wrap my head around such a tragedy at my party. I can't wrap my head around such a tragedy at my party.
Please let me out.
The air here is rather refreshing. I'd even recommend that some of my friends visit the place.
I'm Sherlock Holmes. I'm helping Constable Oswald. You are Matista, Fabio's friend.
This body, yes, it's Matista. But it's a mere shell that will die someday. Just like Fabio.
Please accept my condolences for your friend.
Thank you.
I'm just here to ask questions and find Fabio's murderer.
It will not bring Fabio back.
You have both old and new scars, some from the time when you were a slave with Fabio. Other scars have a different origin. The guests pay good money to torment you?
I am skilled in giving pleasure, but I don't participate in such practices.
I thought your body was...
For sale? It's true. Many unwanted things were done to my body. And the pain helped me to discover...
Occult deities? Yes, the tattoo speaks loudly of it.
Yes. Your gods abandoned me, and the ones I favor now are more protective of me.
How did you escape?
Something happened. One night the master fell down the stairs. I made him fall, and he died. We ran away that day. We managed to get on a ship and traveled here, to Gordona. Fabio and I started a new life here. It was very hard at first, but it became better with time. Until today.
The bruises on your neck are not self-inflicted. Someone else made them.
Some guests can't contain themselves. They even bite, sometimes. I know I can handle the news.
I can't wrap my head around such a tragedy at my party.
Please let me out.
The air here is rather refreshing. I'd even recommend that some of my friends visit the place.
Continue our investigation while I look for the papers.
It's not as right as I saw it like this. You get over there. Oi.
This area is restricted.
I can't wrap my head around such a tragedy at my party.
I know I can handle the news.
Please let me out.
What a bunch of losers.
I can't wrap my head around such a tragedy at my party.
Continue our investigation while I look for the papers.
This area is restricted.
I can't go back to prison.